drive into the heart of me, the love we share.
The 1980s was a golden era of music. MTV had just exploded onto the scene, transforming musicians into larger-than-life superstars overnight. One hit song, the right music video, and boom, you were untouchable. Some bands rode the wave into the next decade. Others, they disappeared without a trace. Where did they go? And why didn't they survive the changing tides of the music industry? Join us in this video as we take a look at 15 rock bands that dominated the 80s, then vanished without a trace. Number 1. Quiet Riot. Before Motley Crue, before Poison, before Bon Jovi, Quiet Riot was the band that brought metal to the masses. Their 1983 album Metal Health wasn't just a hit, it was the first heavy metal album to ever hit number 1 on the Billboard charts. That had never been done before. And the song that made it happen? Come On Feel the Noise. Yeah, it was a cover of a Slade song, but Quiet Riot owned it. It was big, dumb, and perfect for fist pumping, headbanging, and screaming along at the top of your lungs. Come on, feel the noise. Girls, rock your boys. Their follow-up single, Bang Your Head, Metal Health, was another massive hit, and for a brief moment, Quiet Riot was heavy metal. They paved the way for every hair metal band that came after them. So what went wrong? First off, ego and infighting. Frontman Kevin DuBrow had a huge mouth, and he loved to trash talk other bands. He openly criticized other metal groups, bragged about Quiet Riot's success, and managed to alienate a ton of people in the industry. That came back to bite them hard. Their follow-up album Condition Critical bombed. Their label lost interest, and in 1987, DuBrow was fired from his own band. Quiet Riot limped through the 90s with lineup changes, reunions, and constant instability. Sadly, Kevin DuBrow died of a cocaine overdose in 2007, effectively ending the band's original run. They tried to keep going with different singers, but let's be real. Without DuBrow, it just wasn't the same. Today, Quiet Riot is remembered as the band that opened the floodgates for metal in the mainstream. But they're also a warning. When success comes too fast and egos get in the way, it doesn't last. Number 2. A Flock of Seagulls. If you were alive in the 80s, you definitely remember A Flock of Seagulls. And if you don't remember them for their music, you definitely remember that iconic gravity-defying swooping hairstyle worn by frontman Mike Score. These guys weren't just about the looks though. Their 1982 hit, I Ran So Far Away, became an instant classic, an anthem of the new wave era. It had everything, spacey synths, echoing guitars, and lyrics about literally running away. The song made them stars in the US and abroad, and their futuristic, almost sci-fi aesthetic made them a perfect fit for the MTV generation. So what happened? Well, success was fleeting. After their self-titled debut album, the band struggled to replicate that initial spark. Their later releases, while decent, never caught on the same way. Internal tensions, creative differences, and a lack of commercial success led to their breakup in 1986. And the reunions? Let's just say they were messy. Mike Score attempted multiple revivals, but without key original members. The magic just wasn't there. At one point, 2 different versions of A Flock of Seagulls were touring at the same time, each claiming to be the real deal. Today, they're mostly remembered as a historic part of the 80s. Their influence remains undeniable, but their career, well, let's just say they ran so far away and never really came back. Number 3. Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Relax, don't do it. When you wanna go to it, relax.
If the 80s had a shock jock band, it definitely was Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Their 1983 single Relax was everywhere, until it wasn't. The BBC famously banned the song due to its suggestive lyrics, which only made people want to hear it more. Naturally, it rocketed to the top of the UK charts, where it stayed for 5 straight weeks. And just when you thought they were a one-hit wonder, they hit back with 2 Tribes, another massive anthem that became one of the biggest songs of the decade. Frankie Goes to Hollywood was all about spectacle, bold music videos, risque lyrics, and a rebellious attitude that made them feel dangerous. But behind the scenes, things weren't so glamorous. By 1987, the cracks had started to show. Frontman Holly Johnson and the rest of the band were locked in constant feuds, and creative differences led to nuclear-level fallout. Johnson sued the band's management to escape his contract, effectively killing Frankie Goes to Hollywood in the process. There were brief reunions over the years, but none of them lasted. The energy, the controversy, the lightning in a bottle chemistry, all gone. Despite their brief time in the spotlight, Frankie Goes to Hollywood left a lasting mark, whether it was through their unforgettable songs or their ability to turn controversy into chart domination. One thing's for sure, for a moment, they were untouchable, and then silence. Number 4. Ratt. Hair metal in the 80s was insane. Big hair, big riffs, big egos. It was all about excess. And if you were talking about the biggest names in 80s metal, Ratt was right up there with Motley Crue, Poison, and Def Leppard. Their 1984 smash hit Round and Round was everywhere, and had one of the catchiest riffs of the decade, a chorus designed for stadium sing-alongs, and a music video that featured none other than Milton Berle. Yeah, the Milton Berle. Their debut album, Out of the Cellar, was a monster, selling over 3 million copies. They followed it up with Lay It Down and You're in Love, keeping them at the top of the glam metal scene. But here's the thing, hair metal was a brutal genre. If you weren't constantly pumping out hits, the industry moved on fast. By the late 80s, Ratt's albums weren't selling like they used to. Then in 1991, Nirvana happened. Grunge came in like a wrecking ball, making Ratt and every other hair metal band look completely outdated. By 1992, hair metal was dead. Ratt tried to adapt, but it was too late. They limped into the 90s with lineup changes, a couple of breakups, and a revolving door of new members. Frontman Stephen Pearcy quit multiple times, and internal drama made reunions almost impossible. To this day, there are 2 different versions of Ratt battling over the name. Lawsuits, fighting, and very questionable live performances have turned them into a cautionary tale of what happens when too many egos collide. But hey, Round and Round still shreds. Number 5. Berlin. Original lineup. There are hit songs, and then there are movie-defining songs. The ones that become inseparable from the films they're featured in. Berlin's Take My Breath Away falls squarely into the second category. Top Gun was the movie of 1986, had Tom Cruise in a bomber jacket, fighter jets roaring through the sky, and an unforgettable romance. And at the heart of it all, that slow, sultry, synth-heavy ballad. Take My Breath Away wasn't just a song, it was the song. It won a freaking Oscar for Best Original Song. But here's the monster twist. Berlin didn't even write it. The track was penned by legendary songwriter Giorgio Moroder. Yeah, the same guy behind Donna Summer's disco hits and Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. Moroder offered it to Berlin, who recorded it, and suddenly, boom, they were everywhere. For a moment, Berlin looked unstoppable. They had an edgy new wave sound, a striking frontwoman in Terry Nunn, and a growing fan base. But here's where things got messy. The band had spent years crafting a specific underground sound, but after Take My Breath Away, all anyone wanted from them was another soft, sweeping love ballad. That didn't sit well with the group, especially their co-founder John Crawford, who felt they were losing their identity. Tensions boiled over, and by 1987, Berlin had completely imploded. Nunn went solo, and the rest of the band scattered. Just like that, their mainstream moment was over. Berlin has reunited in various forms over the years. Well, let's be real. Nothing they've done since has ever come close to that Top Gun magic. And with Top Gun, Maverick now bringing back nostalgia for everything from the 80s, their place in music history is secured, even if their time in the spotlight was short-lived. Next up is a band that took their signature track, Destination Unknown, way too literal, because their career disappeared almost overnight. Number 6. Missing Persons. Try to imagine the perfect mix of new wave, punk attitude, and experimental fashion. That was Missing Persons. They had the futuristic sense of new wave and the raw energy of rock, and a front woman, Dale Bozio, who looks like she stepped straight out of a dream. For a brief moment, they were everywhere. Their breakout hits, Words, Walking in LA, and Destination Unknown became part of early MTV. Their look was so out there that it was impossible to ignore. Dale Bozio's platinum blonde hair, cartoonishly high-pitched voice, and outrageous outfits often made of clear plastics and fish bowls made her a visual icon of the era. And let's not forget their secret weapon. Missing Persons wasn't just a random new wave band. Dale Bozio and drummer Terry Bozzio were former Frank Zappa collaborators. Guitarist Warren Cucurulo would later join Duran Duran. These weren't just pop stars, they were serious musicians. So what happened? Success came fast, but so did the cracks. Their 1982 debut album Spring Session M was a hit, but by the time they released their follow-up Rhyme and Reason in 1984, the magic was already fading. The album flopped, tensions within the band escalated, and their third album in 1986 barely made a dent in the charts. By the end of '86, they were done. Dale and Terry Bozzio's marriage fell apart. The band imploded, and Missing Persons became, well, missing. Number 7. Soft Cell.
Sometimes I feel I've got to
run away. If you've ever been to an 80s night, you know this song. Soft Cell's Tainted Love was one of the biggest songs of the decade, and one of the most recognizable covers of all time. The original version was a 1964 soul song by Gloria Jones, but Soft Cell stripped it down, added an eerie synthesizer, and turned it into something totally unique. The result? A massive international hit. But here's the thing, Soft Cell was never meant to be mainstream. Unlike other new wave acts, Soft Cell wasn't about radio-friendly pop. They were dark, weird, and underground. They blended synth pop with sleazy club culture, singing about addiction, sleaze, and seedy nightlife. Their follow-up hits like Sex Dwarf were so controversial that their record label practically ignored them. By 1984, Soft Cell was falling apart. Frontman Mark Almond was struggling with drug addiction, and the duo's relationship had completely deteriorated. After just 3 albums, they called it quits. Almond went on to have a successful solo career in the UK, but Soft Cell, they remained a one-hit wonder in the US. They've reunited a few times over the years, but let's be real. When people hear Soft Cell, they don't think of anything beyond Tainted Love. Still, if you're only going to be known for one song, might as well be a song that's impossible to forget. Number 8. Kajagoogoo. Kajagoogoo is an important part of 80s music history. Their 1983 song Too Shy was the very definition of instantly catchy, with its bouncy bass line, dreamy synthesizers, and a chorus that burrowed into your brain. It became a massive hit. For a brief moment, Kajagoogoo had it all: a devoted fan base, MTV airtime, and a lead singer, Lamal, with hair so feathered it looked like he lived in a wind tunnel. But just as they hit it big, they imploded. In a move that can only be described as career sabotage, the band fired their own lead singer right after their first major hit. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Lamal, the voice of the band, was kicked out, reportedly because of tensions with other members. Without Lamal, Kajagoogoo's momentum flatlined. Their next few singles didn't gain as much traction, and by 1985, they had vanished from the charts completely. Lamal tried to go solo. Remember the Never-Ending Story theme? But his solo career fizzled out just as quickly. Years later, Kajagoogoo attempted a few reunions, but it was never quite the same. Their story is a classic case of self-inflicted downfall. A band that had the world at its feet, only to trip over its own ego. Number 9. Dead or Alive. If you've ever been to a wedding, a club, or an 80s night at your local bar, you've heard this song. You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, right round, round, round. Dead or Alive's You Spin Me Round Like a Record was an absolute monster of a hit in 1985. It was the first ever UK #1 single produced by Stock Aitken and Waterman, the legendary production trio behind Rick Astley, Bananarama, and Kylie Minogue. But here's the thing about Dead or Alive. They were never just about the music. They were about the image. And that image, that was Pete Burns, one of the most flamboyant, outrageous, and unapologetic frontmen in music history. Burns had a larger-than-life persona. He wore eye patches, teased his hair to impossible heights, and dressed like a glam rock pirate. His androgynous, gender-bending style was way ahead of its time. Madonna and Boy George may have pushed fashion boundaries, but Pete Burns, he broke them. While You Spin Me Round was an instant classic, Dead or Alive struggled to follow it up. Their next few albums saw some success, especially in Japan, but they never reached the same heights again. As the 90s rolled in, Dead or Alive became more of a fan act than a mainstream one. Meanwhile, Pete Burns' personal life started to overshadow his music. He underwent a staggering amount of plastic surgeries, some of which led to serious medical complications. Instead of making music, he became a reality TV personality, appearing on Celebrity Big Brother UK and other reality shows where his outrageous behavior kept audiences hooked. Tragically, Burns passed away in 2016 from a heart attack at just 57 years old. His death marked the end of Dead or Alive, but their legacy remains. You Spin Me Round is immortal, living on in countless remixes, covers, and movie soundtracks. Number 10. Information Society.
Tell me what's on your mind.
If you were into synth pop in the late 80s, you probably loved Information Society. They weren't just another electronic band. They were nerds, making music for other nerds, and they owned it. Their biggest hit, What's on Your Mind, Pure Energy, a track that felt light years ahead of its time. Released in 1988, this song was packed with an infectious dance beat, and most memorably, a sample of Leonard Nimoy as Spock from Star Trek, saying Pure Energy. That single clip made the song, giving it an edge that perfectly fit with the late 80s fascination with technology in the future. The song was a smash, hitting number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, and their self-titled album went gold. They followed it up with Walking Away and Repetition, both of which performed decently but never reached the same heights. So what happened? Like a lot of synth-heavy bands, Information Society struggled when the 90s arrived. The mainstream wasn't interested in high-tech, futuristic pop anymore. Grunge and gangsta rap had taken over. Their label pushed them to go in a harder direction, but it wasn't a natural fit. By the mid-90s, Information Society had faded from the charts. But here's the plot twist. They never really disappeared. Instead of vanishing completely, they shifted into underground electronic music scenes, especially in Brazil, where they had a huge following. Over the years, the band has continued to release music, albeit for a much smaller audience. They're not pop stars anymore, but to their dedicated fans, they're legends. Number 11. T'Pau. Alright, here's a name that doesn't get brought up nearly enough. T'Pau. For those who don't know, T'Pau was a British band fronted by Carol Decker, and in 1987 they had one of the biggest songs of the year with Heart and Soul. Now this song was unique. Unlike the straightforward pop bangers of the time, Heart and Soul was layered. It had spoken verses, haunting harmonies, and a chorus that just soared. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did. The song blew up first in the US, cracking the Billboard Top 5 before becoming a smash hit in the UK. And for a moment it looked like T'Pau was poised for global domination. Their follow-up, China in Your Hand, was even bigger in the UK, spending 5 weeks at number 1 in Britain. They were superstars. But then, the downfall. T'Pau fell into the classic trap of burnout. Their success came so fast that they were pressured to crank out more hits, more albums, more everything. But their later releases never hit the same highs. By the early 90s, their chart dominance was over, and the band quietly faded from mainstream relevance. Carol Decker continued performing in various forms, but T'Pau never managed a full-scale comeback. In the US, they're often dismissed as a one-hit wonder. In the UK, they're fondly remembered, but mostly as a band from a very specific time in history. Their name, fun fact, came from a Star Trek character, but their career, more like a shooting star. Bright, beautiful, and gone too soon. Number 12. New Shooz. If you've ever walked into a mall, turned on an 80s throwback playlist, or watched a nostalgic commercial, you've probably heard New Shooz' biggest hit, I Can't Wait. This 1986 track was pure bubblegum funk, a silky smooth groove, hypnotic melody, and that iconic electronic vocal loop that made it sound like the future. It felt like the kind of song that had to be a hit, and it was. New Shooz wasn't some big pop machine. They were actually an indie band from Portland, Oregon, led by John Smith and his wife, Valerie Day. They self-released I Can't Wait in 1984, and for a while, nothing happened. But then, a Dutch remixer picked it up, transformed it into the version we all know today, and suddenly, New Shooz was everywhere. Their album Poolside was a success, and their follow-up single Point of No Return was another slick, synth-heavy jam. But after that, the momentum vanished. Their second album, Told You So, came out in 1988, but the music industry had already moved on. New Shooz wasn't quite dance pop, not quite funk, not quite new wave, and without a clear category, they got lost in the shuffle. By the early 90s, they faded into obscurity, and the duo stepped away from the mainstream. But here's the thing, I Can't Wait never went away. It's been remixed, sampled, and covered so many times that even if you don't recognize New Shooz, you definitely recognize their signature hit. Number 13. Quarterflash. If you were around in 1981, chances are you couldn't escape Harden My Heart. That smooth, saxophone-drenched power ballad became an instant classic, a song that felt like it belonged on every movie soundtrack. It was moody, dramatic, and unforgettable, and for a moment, Quarterflash looked like the next big thing. Fronted by Randy Ross, who sang and played saxophone, Quarterflash had something different. Their self-titled debut album went platinum, and their mix of arena rock and new wave influences made them a radio staple. But here's the thing, around the early 80s, if you weren't following the trends, you got left behind. Quarterflash's second album, Take Another Picture, was solid, but it didn't produce another Harden My Heart level hit. Their third album in 1985, a total commercial disaster. By 1988, the band quietly called it quits. The Rosses continued making music, mostly for niche audiences, but Quarterflash never recaptured their early 80s momentum. Today, they're often forgotten in the larger conversation about 80s rock. But Harden My Heart? That song remains timeless. Number 14. The Outfield.
Josie's on a vacation far away.
Josie's on a vacation far away. If you just sang that in your head, congratulations, you're officially a child of the 80s. The Outfield's Your Love is one of those songs that refuses to die. It's been played millions of times on the radio, featured in TV shows, movies, commercials, and blasted at sporting events. It's one of those songs that everybody knows, even if they don't remember the band that recorded it. And that's exactly the problem. The Outfield was a British rock band that didn't sound British at all. Their sound was pure American FM radio gold. Catchy hooks, anthemic choruses, and guitar tunes that felt perfect for driving with the windows down. Their 1985 debut album, Play Deep, was a massive success, going triple platinum in the US. But here's where things went sideways. Your Love was so big that it completely overshadowed everything else they did. Their follow-up singles like All the Love in the World and Since You've Been Gone were solid, but they just couldn't match the cultural impact of that one song. By the early 90s, grunge was taking over, and their brand of melodic rock started feeling dated. They kept making music, but the mainstream had moved on. Guitarist John Spinks and vocalist Tony Lewis continued working together for years, but it was quiet. No big hits, no massive comebacks, just a band that kept going, mostly for their loyal fans. Sadly, Spinks passed away in 2014, and Tony Lewis followed in 2020, effectively closing the Outfield's chapter forever. But Your Love? That song will never die. Last on our list, we have a band that soared to fame, only to see their reputation falter when they became the target of relentless mockery and their image was forever tied to a cartoon. Number 15, Winger. If you were into late 80s hair metal, Winger had everything you wanted. Soaring vocals, blazing guitar solos, and enough leather and hairspray to set off a fire alarm. Their 1988 debut album went platinum, fueled by hits like Madeleine and 17. And let's talk about 17 for a second, because if there was ever a definitive sleazy, borderline problematic rock anthem, that was it. She's only 17. Daddy says she's too young, but she's old enough for me. Yeah, different times. Frontman Kip Winger wasn't just another hair metal singer. He was actually classically trained and had a level of musical talent that set him apart from the pack. Guitarist Red Beach could shred, and in terms of sheer technical skill, Winger was way ahead of a lot of their glam metal peers. But that didn't save them from what came next. Two things destroyed Winger's career almost overnight. One was the grunge revolution, because as soon as Nirvana and Pearl Jam showed up, Winger and every other band with big hair became uncool practically overnight. Secondly was Beavis and Butthead, and this one hurt the most. In the 90s, MTV's Beavis and Butthead became the show for teenagers, and on that show, there was a running joke. Stewart, the nerdy loser character, always wore a Winger t-shirt, while the cool metalhead duo rocked shirts from Metallica and AC/DC. The message was clear. Winger wasn't just uncool, they were lame. That single joke torpedoed their reputation. Sales plummeted. Kip Winger went from selling out arenas to becoming a literal punchline. The band called it quits in the 90s, but over the years, Winger has slowly regained some respect. Kip went on to have a successful career in classical music. Yeah, really. And the band reunited in the 2000s for small tours. But let's be honest, when people hear Winger today, their first thought isn't great musicians. It's that nerd on Beavis and Butthead. And that's it. 15 bands that ruled the 80s, then vanished without a trace. Some fell victim to changing trends. Some imploded from the inside. Some just weren't built to last. But for a brief shining moment, they were legends. So which of these forgotten 80s legends do you think deserved a second chance? If you loved this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more, and let us know in the comments below who we should cover next.